Hello and welcome back to another Discovery review. The final review of Discovery for about 5 weeks. Yes, immediately after the last episode. I say immediately, actually, the day after. Star Trek made a surprise announcement on Twitter that this is the mid-season finale of season 4, and then Discovery's gonna stop, Prodigy's gonna resume for 5 weeks, and then Discovery will come back, which, I don't know. I mean, it throws into question the schedule. It's like, are we getting Picard in February still then? I don't know. Like, Prodigy fits in so nicely, it almost seems planned, but with all the distribution stuff that's been going on globally, I don't know. My real thing is it's just disappointing, even though for me, it's actually should be great news. Um, Having to review Prodigy and Discovery would have been a big challenge for the next 5 weeks. But it just means this next episode we're gonna get, I've kind of already feel like I know how it's gonna go. Because you gotta have your cliffhanger thing. Well, actually, if it's planned. If it wasn't a planned mid-season finale, you might not have the same cliffhanger structure, kind of like the first season did. But really, mostly it's like, I'm not gonna think about Discovery at all for the last 5 weeks. Not because it's, sorry, the next 5 weeks. Not because it's Discovery, but because I just don't think about the shows, even between these reviews. Sure, Discovery's never had the biggest cliffhanger episode yet, but Lower Decks, the last season of Lower Decks, ended on a cliffhanger, and I'm very invested in the story. I also haven't thought about it since the last episode of Lower Decks aired out. I don't know, I'm just gonna not care. I'm not gonna be anticipating the next episode of Discovery after this. I could be mega wrong, of course. And even classic Star Trek, I never got that. You may say it's because I could binge it, and sure, that's true. Like, I didn't have any weight between the Best of Both Worlds Part 1 and 2. But there were several two-parters where, I didn't know it was a two-part or extended story going in. And so I watched it. It's like, well, now it's bedtime or something, and I gotta go to school. And, like, I did just have gaps between two-parters and extended stories before. Best of Both Worlds might have even been one of them. I just don't care. Like, I would have much rather just, especially with so many Star Trek stories going on, just getting done with one and moving on to the next. I can understand Prodigy. It probably takes a pretty long to make with the style of animation they're doing, and it's way longer than the others. It's like, what, a 20-ish episode season? And probably appeals to the lowest amount of people of any of the Star Treks, being the kids show. But if we're gonna start breaking up these live action shows when we have, 5 simultaneous plot lines going on, like, I don't know, I'm just not happy with it. Also, this video might be cut a bit short, just kind of end abruptly, because I am live yet again from another leper colony, albeit a recovering one. Yes, it turns out Omicron is quite contagious, and so it took down this entire household of fully vaccinated individuals within like 2 or 3 days. So yeah, just after I recorded the last review. Don't feel bad for me, though. Feel bad for me for the fact that my university still expects me to show up for in-person classes when everyone's taking in-person classes in a few weeks. That's not gonna go well. But yeah, the point is, I already have a real bad cough. The same cough I've had since, I think, Lower Decks episode 7 or something crazy. The first time I was in a leper colony. Yeah, that has nothing to do with COVID anymore. That's just genetics in me. Well, the point is, I'm actually holding this bowl. This rather large bowl, just in case my cough gets so bad that I need to use it. Because I had to do that once, when I was actually sick. And if I'm going to be talking for an hour, which makes the cough worse, I'll let you put it together. But yeah, that's why I'm recording this intro 4 hours early. And yeah, there will be awkward cuts like that because of my cough, sparing you having to listen to it. But let's wait, watch this finale, and I will see you after this. This cut right here. So 3 things immediately. First off, and very importantly, I have not seen anything past this screen right here. I assume there's like a next time on Discovery for the last few episodes after this screen. There might not be. I might sound crazy. Don't tell me what's past this. I don't like knowing what's coming. I've always hated next times ons. Like, just awful. I know I do those season analysis videos because it's hard to avoid it, but like in this line of work. But yeah, let's try not to. If you're gonna talk about stuff that's on like any sort of next time on in the comments, just try and put it past like a spoilery or something, you know? Second, that was not a planned mid-season finale. I mean, that, you know, compared to, hey, we're stranded in the mirror universe. Well, no, we're stranded in another universe in season one. I feel now this was definitely a move based off that, you know, they've been giving Discovery away in loads of countries practically. Like it's something to do with the fallout of that. And we're gonna be delaying Picard and everything. Like this was not a planned delay, is what I'm getting. Thirdly, that was great. That was the best episode of Discovery. I was sitting there actually as it was ending going, I don't actually have a complaint. And then, of course, they had to ruin it. Who in their right mind let Book leave Discovery? Like, yes, okay, as an audience, obviously, the scientist guy and probably Book, so, like, someone was obviously going to steal and try and do the attack anyway. But, like, who at both on Discovery and then at Federation headquarters, who had to clear airspace and stuff, there had to be some sort of traffic control going on, was like, yeah, right, you can go. You know, just have fun. True, they didn't know about the spore drive, but they didn't, like, you know, I guess I can kind of get it, because Discovery didn't know what went down before. They probably could have watched the conference, actually, like in some sort of live stream, maybe. But I could see him going through and then they gave some random excuse like I don't know they didn't know about the spore drive. Like it's all right, but you almost got away with a no complaints. No big complaints, I'll say, for like a conference of species from all four quadrants, which I really like that comment, by the way, because especially with his interconnected, his prodigy is kind of implying the Delta Quadrant is getting with the Alpha and Beta quadrants. Whatever remains of the Dominion could obviously come through the wormhole, but it does imply we've spread out quite a bit. But for such a huge conference, there was very little like actual discussion aside from anyone other than the Federation and Navarre, who is now the Federation. I was actually thinking it's interesting because we really don't know the state of the galaxy. Like we know it probably the best out of any show. Well, between this and Picard, we know this state of the galaxy much better. But what I mean is the Federation, 60 planets. I mean, it's probably the biggest player around, but not like a huge, I don't know, maybe like a Canada, you could say. But I was saying that, like, you'd think, you know, some military species would speak up. But then you go through the heads, like, you know, the Romulans, the Klingons, the Cardassians, who, like, aren't very Federation. But in the 32nd century, it's like, well, the Romulans are in the Federation, and basically the long list of enemies, historical enemies we've had, are either well, I think the Romulans are the only confirmed Federation members, but we've had confirmation that the Federation, Cardassian, and Bajor are in great relations. We've had implications that the Klingons and Cardassians, Ferengi, everyone has joined. Some stronger implications than others. Of course, the Klingons did join in an alternate timeline. The only people we don't really know anything about is the Dominion, but, you know, they probably changed a bit after Deep Space Nine, to say the least, and certainly in the past 1,000 years. And I actually like that about Discovery. I really do. But still, it's interesting that was very little discussion. Like, I don't know how UN meetings tend to go, but I expect there's a bit more back and forth. Let's continue on this trend of the meeting, though. I was saying originally you could probably kind of sit next to the DMA with a bomb, wait in, like, if it becomes a threat, then you can destroy it. And I kind of talked myself out of that, because you'd kind of need Discovery to jump in, or jump with it if it starts to, well, jump itself. Of course, you can't do that, because Discovery has to be the one to go to another galaxy. No other ship could make it. And then even if another ship could, you're then detonating this, like, subspace destroying weapon, like, right next to a planet or something. There's still, like, probably minimal risk. As Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy famously put it, space is really big. Unfathomably big. I've actually got that somewhere. I've never read it, but, yeah, like, it's very unlikely it will hit a planet in the time it takes Discovery to go to these people, go like, hey, are you hostile? Yes, no, jump back. So I will let that go. But it did feel a little bit like a binary, do we try and make peaceful contact or attack them? Which it isn't really. There were kind of implications that it's not. This was kind of a meeting of this one thing, then how do we proceed? Because to me, the sort of obvious solution is, well, you send Burnham to go make peaceful contact, yeah, but also you should really still start building your army and building your defense. I mean, it's not gonna be an act of aggression, right? Like, story-wise, it most likely isn't. But in the universe, this is definitely an attack, and even if they don't mean aggression, like, yeah, this is something you have to defend yourself against. When they sent the NX to go find the Zindi, Earth didn't just sit there twiddling its thumbs, no, it built an army just in case. And I'd like to draw Book's argument, which is always one that's bothered me, where it's like, okay, yeah, he doesn't want, like, anyone, to go through what he did. Okay, Mr. Book, tell me what's on the other side of that wormhole that, as we've established, this subspace disrupting shockwave is going to travel through. And potentially it sounds like you might send the DMA shooting through space, or maybe through it. Like, it's a bit unclear, but, what if this wormhole is next to a planet? Then that planet is going to get destroyed, just like Quajon. And just because it happens not to be a Milky Way planet, that's okay. Like, Book is very much, he even said in this episode, like, after what they did doesn't matter, how we treat them. Like, I don't think that would sway him. But it's weird that it wouldn't have been brought up, and is always a thing I've never gotten. Like, I'll cite a Doctor Who episode. One of my favorite classic Doctor Who moments is 7th Doctor, might even be season 26, the last one. It's the second to last ever episode of classic Doctor Who, The Curse of Fenric, is a mid-World War II, post-World War II, like immediately post, I can't quite remember. I think it's World War II story, where there's this, basically the alien is, they feed off fear and are repelled by faith, or stuff like that. Faith in anything, doesn't matter. And so there's this priest guy who basically is trying to repel the aliens. He's like, I have faith in, like, humanity, the good of people, he's a priesty kind of guy, the virtues, like, yeah, his faith in God and God's people. And basically the aliens are like, well, no, they bring up the bombings, and stuff, and the priest goes, German bombs do not fear me. No, that's not it. I've been trying to explain it. I'm just going to put the clip up, if I can find it.
And you stopped believing when the bombs started falling.
I'm not frightened of German bombs.
Not German bombs. British.
On German cities. British bombs killing German children.
And yeah, basically that. It's Book's argument is like, oh yeah, we've got to stop these attacks, and, like, so people don't suffer. It's like, okay, yeah, but what about the people on the other side of the wormhole? And sure, it's conjecture that there are people on the other side of the wormhole. I mean, probably, like, maybe that Ryzen guy's scientist buddy they've just introduced, but how would he... I don't know. Let's stop trying to use Scooby-Doo to solve the villain of the DMA. But as Book himself pointed out, like, yeah, this whole thing is about risk, and there's, like, a pretty good chance that there's something at the other end of that wormhole. Like, someone's got to control the DMA, maybe, or stuff like that. Here's a thought. I wonder if the other side, if, like, the other galaxy is also having this same problem. Like, it's not that they're doing anything. It's like there's someone in the middle, maybe, that's basically causing a wormhole on either end. Like, they're in another universe, because it... Again, I think we kind of established the DMA was not the Ryzen guy, and at this point, the only person who could possibly be responsible for the DMA is the Ryzen guy's friend. So again, by using Scooby-Doo logic of the person who never shows up until the end, the other ending of Scooby-Doo. No, we're not going to do that. But no, I think less so for that argument, that problem, but especially for the Zora one, I think this episode was the first time Discovery's laid out their problem, they've kind of gone like, yeah, I mean, there's not, like, you don't really answer it. Like, Tuvix is the example I'm going to use, because a lot of people will cite that Tuvix is a bad episode, because when you talk about Tuvix, there are people who are way over here, with, like, Tuvix absolutely should have died, Janeway was completely in the right, yada yada. There are people over here who believes, rightfully so, that Janeway is some sort of homicidal maniac and only killed Tuvix because she wanted cups of coffee. There is nobody in the middle. And I have never seen anyone go, oh, well, maybe, it's kind of hot. No, that is a polarizing issue. So what does that mean? It means you sit down to watch Tuvix, you already have an opinion. You probably didn't know it because, admittedly, the merging of two individuals isn't something that comes up in daily life, but you already had an opinion. Then you left this episode not having thought about that opinion or changed it. And the great episodes of Star Trek are always the tricky ones, where it's like everyone is all kind of uncomfortable with the problem. And so I called it last time, like, Zora absolutely should be removed from Discovery, because she was a liability, and I didn't expect her the next episode to be a liability, and admittedly not for this reason. And I'll get into if I still believe that later. But as soon as Zora beamed her little suicide button, I'll call it, that's what it was. No, her execution button, not a suicide button. And then she explained it, I kind of thought that's what the episode was going to be about, and I sat back and was like, ugh. Because I don't like that, right? And everyone but Paul at the table is like, I don't like that. And then if you ask me, all right, why? I'm like, well, it's because I don't like it. Like, I think consent will excuse a lot. Not everything. There are limits, but quite a bit. And the fact that Zora set forth, it was like, well, all right, I don't want to be separated from my body. I don't want to do that, like, to such the extreme that I'm willing to die for it. I believe that I can actively, serve this ship as I'm supposed to. You don't believe that. And I am so confident that you are wrong, and I do not want to leave my body so desperately that I'm willing to put my life on the line. That's her right. I can't put forth actual reasons why, like, you then have the problem, though, where your captain's in a incredibly critical situation by necessity. Like, that'd be the only ones that Zora might not be able to perform. And then also having to make the decision, do I literally kill a unique form of life? And there's going to be hesitation there, especially if there's a bond that, like, Burnham and Saru seem to have with Zora, the two most likely officers to hit that button. But at the same time, you have the alternative of removing Zora. And to Zora, that might as well be death. I'm actually glad it didn't become an issue with a button. I'm very happy with basically how everyone treated the Zora situation. I was kind of bothered at first. Like, why are they having these conversations on Discovery where Zora can hear them? And yeah, it was addressed very easily with, Cronenberg, who, by the way, did tell us who he was. Unfortunately, Paramount Plus was buffering and I was coughing, so I missed it. But yeah, he was some sort of consultant guy. But then Cronenberg was like, no, we're having this conversation. We're having it together, and Zora's important. I loved everything about that. Like, proper Star Trek. And even their behaviors. Like, I love Stamets' like, I don't know why I'm struggling so much with this. I wish I didn't have to. And my favorite probably is Cronenberg's like, if you hadn't changed your mind, I probably would have recommended that you be transferred. And Paul's just like, as it should have been. It's the problem I had on the shuttle with kind of the racism of the cadets that I talked a lot about in whatever that episode was, that review. This is the opposite, where, it's Paul going, like, if I can't get past my racism towards artificial intelligences, which I feel kind of weird because Zora is, like, yes, also a new form of life, but also an artificial one, probably. Like, it's little legal trickery. But anyway, it's like, yeah, then I'm the one who's going to move, not Zora. I know I get a fair few comments in these reviews. The occasional comment is just like, oh, this is an awful show. Just like, I get, I think, some of the strems of, strems? Is that even a word? The scale I talked about earlier. You love Discovery for, like, literally no reason, always have. You've hated it and always will for literally no reason. And then, like a scale on there. Every now and then I get kind of the tops of that. I hate Discovery for the sake of it being new for some unreasonable things. You've seen my reviews. I'm all here for critique. I'm also all here for praise. Win deserved. I'd really love to hear if you completely disagree with me. Or like, I hated that. That was a god-awful episode of Star Trek. And as awful as every other episode of Discovery, which is, just the worst television. I'd love if you could try and explain to me why. Because just about everything about that, I loved it. It was great. It's been the best episode of the season. And it's been proper Star Trek. And it's been proper Star Trek for the first time in Discovery in some cases. Like in its in its problem. It was a philosophical, no real right answer problem in both ways. I think Zora's plotline was more successful in that. Like, I think if you could have come up with better arguments, or honestly, it was probably a matter of time. If you really could have shown me a 5-hour conference, like really expertly laying out all possible avenues they could explore and defending them, then yeah, you know, but you can't lay out a 5-hour conference. Like, for one, not many people would watch it. I probably would. I think the episode was, like, they had a good balance of Zora plot versus conference plot, so I wouldn't change it. It's a shame, and I think they probably could have done better, but they still did good and enjoyable. And yeah, I mean, as everyone in that room is very clear saying that, like, yeah, there are merits to both situations. Both courses of action. I still wouldn't be surprised if there's not an actual intelligence behind the DMA, though. Like, again, if we remember when they were pitching this series as something, an enemy Star Trek has literally never seen before, it was not a person, like, it was a force of nature. Well, if the DMA is artificial, that's not a force of nature. Like, you're getting really wishy-washy. And I'm happy with how much this isn't the Enterprise 3-parter. Romulan drone ship, Andorians, humans, Tellarites, and Vulcans coming together, first mission. That episode, which I said it probably was going to be a lot like. Yeah, I'm happy with that first part. I wish it wasn't a first part. I wish this was all one thing we just continued on with. But yeah, I thought it was great. I loved it. Best episode of Discovery this season, by far. I'll just jump into the scene by scene then. This is probably going to be a bit of a shorter video. I'm very conscious of the fact I've been cutting out a lot of coughs, and I don't want to get to the point where I can't talk, so let's just jump in. Oh, sorry, I've actually missed stuff with the Zora plot. The resolution of the Zora plot. How do I feel about it? I am very happy that they ended up doing exactly what I thought they should do. Well, not quite, because, again, like, yes, they should have made Zora a member of Starfleet, which is exactly what they've done. I think Zora probably should go to the academy still, or, some sort of training. More okay that she's not, though, because she is programmed with Federation values, And she has a core there. She still, yes, needs training, discipline, sorting out, but there's also an immediate crisis at hand, like, Discovery has to be the ship to go. I still expect problems, because, you're essentially sending a completely untrained individual to serve as a Starfleet officer with a lot of responsibility. And there's also, honestly, just something messed up, I find, about sentient starships. For one, well, on a personal note, I never liked the idea of a sentient house of any kind that could always see you at all times. Quite frankly, I want a bathroom where my house can't watch me. But beyond that, there's you're sending the ship into battle. Even if it's not a battleship, Starfleet ships get into scrape. You're actually making the ships essentially murder each other. The crew can abandon the ship cannot abandon the ship. Zora feels, maybe not pain, but some sort of obvious discomfort and, well, maybe emotional pain, like functional pain, at losing parts of the ship, as we saw in the last episode when all of the external sensors functionally stopped working, or at least stopped receiving input, which is what they'd do if they'd stop working. And yeah, ships eventually get obsolete, they get replaced, they get scrapped. They didn't create Zora, but you still kind of have to deal with it, which is... I'd feel weird piloting a sentient starship and ordering it, into battle or stuff like that, into dangerous situations. But for the first time ever, I think this is actually a representation of what I've always felt about AI and developing, when I say AI, true AI. Not like the neural nets or the stuff that drive the cars nowadays. Which is, I absolutely firmly believe that we should never pursue and actually try and make a sentient AI. That just feels dumb for every reason. Not because I'm afraid of some evil takeover. Why would I be? Why would... a sentient AI is just a person. No, the reason I don't think we should do it is because I think humanity has a very bad track record of rights. And even in the utopian of Star Trek, we see, Data and the Doctor go through troubles. being sentient life forms. And there's prejudice against it. And even if we have the perfect system for it, right? Like, humanity is just giving out human rights left, right, and center. I don't believe that once we develop that fully sentient AI, humanity will recognize it as a fully sentient AI for quite a while. And I'm not even sure there is that line, or that you could define that line, even if it is there. So you could have sentient enough robots working in slavery, essentially, and hating it. And yeah, it's just, once you do have them, like, well, like, then what do we get? Like, what do we get from a fully sentient AI? You just lose all the advantages that robot workers give. Like, they're probably a bit faster. Maybe they could do some space missions better, but you also have to give them breaks and deal with their emotional well-being. They're become very high maintenance. You have to pay them. But, assuming it's possible to create fully sentient AI...
Sooner or later, this man, or others like him, will succeed in replicating Commander data.
There'll be a country that doesn't make it illegal. Even if there does, there'll be some scientist who does it. It'll happen, like, accidentally. Someone will do it, right? And the moment that a fully sentient AI exists, then it needs to have the full rights of any human, any sentient life form, in a Star Trek world, any alien, any human, any species, it needs the full rights of, instantly. Because, well, you've gone and made it, now we gotta deal with the consequences. It would be better for everyone if you didn't make this sentient life form. Now we've got it, it's a person, and we've got to deal with the fact that there's just a new race in the universe. I mean, not that it's their fault, like, any more than a baby is to blame for their parents, or that it's a problem. It's not a problem. I think that, in reality, and the sentient life form would have a pretty hard life. The first few, because it's gonna be a minority, and it's gonna be a new race, and most people aren't gonna recognize it. And even without that third bit, minorities and new races do not have great track records in history with regards to how they're treated. That's what Starfleet did. They're like, no, we're not going to make sentient AIs. They've been pretty against it, seemingly since, like, the Picard days. But it's like, yeah, no sentient AIs on ships whatsoever. But the moment there is one that happens to crop up, on its own accord, they're like, well, okay, we have to live with this now. Zora's a person. I've just realized they also managed to make this episode without once making me think of Measure of a Man while I'm watching it. Like, they did it very differently, and it's functionally the same process. It ends with the same result. I'm pretty sure I just watched Measure of a Man. I don't think they declare Data a person. They declare him not property, and that he has the right to choose. But, functionally, the same results. Yeah, so that's impressive. A very similar topic has been done, but they're doing it differently enough that I don't go, oh, I'm watching Measure of a Man. Unlike the last episode, where I thought of 5 different episodes that were exactly like what I was watching before the titles roll. Who wants to play a game of Who's That Pokemon? I feel like I should know this one. Trill, I don't know. Butterfly people, if we want to be casually alien racism. Again, vaguely familiar, I'll get to them, Andorian. But, I mean, this guy right here is the problem with Discovery's makeup department, right? I mean, in terms of, like, quality, outstanding. I mean, it's a big budget, modern motion picture. I'm sure they've won awards for it. But as a Star Trek, Discovery just has the reputation of changing species, often into unrecognizability. Right. That was Tellarites, in case you couldn't tell. They're vaguely, like, a lot of kind of random alien of the week species. Is that because it's a generic alien of the week, or because it's supposed to be a known species, and it's just been redesigned beyond recognition? Like, I'd love more recognizable species. I think I saw one I'll point out that looked like it might have been a Cardassian Jemadar, but it's just a lot of redesigns for the sake of redesigns. The Ferengi's a great example where, like, I mean, sure, it's a Ferengi, but it doesn't look like a Ferengi. And of course, on the extreme end, you have Klingons and Tellarites who are just... no. This is just a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles costume someone got from Spirit Halloween. Casual alien racism, you see what I mean? And of course, another... what is a Morn? I don't remember what Morn is. But Bald. I mean, are the Morn just bald now? Morn was bald because he ingested latinum, and he lost all his hair. But if we just kind of like all the Morns are bald, you think someone would have heard the complaints like after the first episode, someone on the production and started adding hair to the Morns? But no. Just to be clear, I'm not against other members of that species being bald. I just feel like they wouldn't all be bald, surely, like if they can grow hair. Pretty sure the small one there, this is hard to do. I think that might be the species in Abrams' Star Trek, the guy who was with Scotty on the ice planet. Actually, I'm noticing a lot of repeats. Like, there's been 4 Morns in that pan down. There were 3 of those guys I was just talking about. At least 3. There's another Andorian. How many worlds are at this conference? Now, I'll concede that the other Star Treks, older ones, particularly Deep Space Nine, really benefited from having so many seasons before them. Like the makeup room of just random prosthetics was insane. Like by the end of Enterprise, it was insane. And so that really helped create not just loads of diverse aliens, but ones we would recognize. On Deep Space Nine, you'll constantly see species we recognize, like Pakleds or whatever, just because they have the makeup lying around and the costumes. And I'll concede Discovery doesn't have that. Modern Star Trek doesn't. And so they have to make new ones. They can't just pull old ones out of the hat. And often that's kind of how production goes. I wish there was a little bit more effort, though, put into, like, the diversity in these aliens. And also just recognizable ones. Like, this is supposed to be a huge collection of worlds, like, immediately around the Federation. And we have a pretty good idea of what those people look like. And they're not 5 Morns. Looking around, I kind of miss the uniforms as well. Everyone's just largely wearing the same thing. You have people like this, but I mean, I think it's a big part between generic sci-fi and Star Trek, Star Wars, Doctor Who, anything, where I can't quite tell you how you make these feels, but there are scenes where I'm kind of looking, it's like, I don't know, this kind of looks like it could be any sci-fi if it weren't for maybe the Federation aesthetic we kind of see around, or the occasional Starfleet officer. But I'm like, there's 5 Morns in this picture. Why is it I don't see that and go, that's a Star Trek species? And you could say, yeah, there's a problematic nature where, I recognize the Pakleds in Deep Space Nine because they were all wearing the same, like, yellow clothes as the first Pakleds. But there's also places where it works, like every Klingon we see is wearing the Klingon officer armor because they're, by and large, Klingon officers. But there was also diversity in fashion, particularly in the women, in non-official officer capacity. And I don't think they should be as afraid of something you could call a costume as they are. Because a lot of alien uniforms probably would be vaguely costume-esque to us. I mean, look at Earth. I'm going to assume that most of the people watching this... Well, I don't have to assume. My demographics tell me most of the people watching this are American, European, focus on the United States, the UK, Germany, usually the big 3 for English-speaking. Canada's there. But if you think of, then, more traditional Indian uniforms, as in Asia, India, or Japanese kimonos and stuff, traditional Chinese wear, like, those actually are costumes to us. You could go down to your local Spirit Halloween and buy some. Probably a bit problematically, but I also know that one of my top demographics is India. Probably because of the technology stuff, those videos I used to do. But if you're one of my Indian viewers watching this, there's probably stuff I don't know about that you could say the same in America. I mean, heck, look at your country right now, subtract 100 years, and tell me that's not a costume. Oh yeah, I did have a complaint. Again, they jumped a lot of bounds. Like, they opened up this thing, and so we're seeing things that happened to Zora in the past. Well, what's the obvious conclusion? This is Zora's memories. What's the conclusion that the Discovery team comes to as obvious fact with no analysis? This is her subconscious. This is what Zora's values are. One of these scenes was a shuttlecraft landing on Trill. This one is like just of a sun or something. And they're like, this is Zora's core values, obviously, and her guiding principles. And I'm just like, okay, maybe, but could it also just be her memories? Like, you're really pulling a lot of information out of this that isn't there. And like, I can't say you're wrong for the same reason you can't say I'm right. All you've done is literally looked at this thing and gone, I know exactly what it is. Remember when I pulled this up earlier and see how at the bottom it says Sylvester McCoy, complete season 3? Well, a lot of you would probably be inclined to think this is the 3rd season of Doctor Who. It isn't. It's the 26th season of Doctor Who. They just label them rather strangely for the American packages. Sometimes appearances can be deceiving. And they've come to conclusions that, to me, are very different than the obvious conclusion of, this is Zora's memories. Like that, no, sorry, I remembered why this made me so angry. They think it's her dreams. Raise your hand if 100% of your dreams have just been perfect recollections of things that have happened to you. People have those dreams, I'm sure. But no, like, that's not all your dreams. Why are none of her dreams weird? Or, like, surely she'd be stress dreaming right now if she does dream. Even if these are her dreams, how do they prescribe her values and ideals? Do you dream about your values and ideals? Like, I'd have a lot more dreams in Starfleet if I did. I certainly don't. Remember in a psychology class, it might have even been the most prevalent dream, like type of dream for humanity is sexual dreams. So are you telling me that the driving value and what the general humanity puts among all else, morally speaking, is sex? Okay, yeah, now that you've made the joke of yes, now can you give me a real answer? I swear I've seen half these races in Doctor Who, and I don't know if that's because I have, or if Doctor Who's just kind of my generic sci-fi analogy. If we've seen this guy before, he's from the Delta Quadrant, and there's the guy I was talking about earlier. I think they're a new species. Okay, I give up. I can't find the thing that looked kind of like a Cardassian, but a bit purple. It was weird, kind of had a big... I'm not sure what was going on. I was really looking forward to seeing it in the pause, but I can't find it. Oh, and again, what the heck is Vance doing? You think he'd be at this meeting. And yeah, I do have minor problems with they made it be Book and Burnham. The same kind of Burnham has to be everything kind of thing. I mean... Book, again, is the sole surviving member of Quajon. Like, it kind of makes sense he could represent at this council. Burnham is just a captain, ultimately. Kind of the captain who would be leading the mission. But again, I've talked about this so much on Discovery, like, I'm done. Discovery really likes getting rid of its main cast, doesn't it? The analyzer in me really wants to look at this scene and go, oh, so Trill is the planet that they're going to threaten with the DMA next, which I'll admit is a good planet. It's the invasion of Beta Z, you know, like it's a planet that doesn't really matter, but is also incredibly important. And I mean, Trill is the planet I am probably the most invested in all of Star Trek, but I also might just be reading too much into that, and they're just getting rid of Gray to do Gray stuff. I think that's it for today. We managed to record for an hour. I don't know how. I don't feel like it went on that long, but I hope you enjoyed. I will see you February 10th for more Discovery review. I'll also see you next week for Prodigy review. I don't think next week's review will be affected, but the week after, I should be in my dorm again, and as I mentioned before, I will have a roommate again. So I'll have the university upload speed, meaning I can get these uploaded, well, faster than I can actually write their descriptions once I've got them edited. But there's probably a very good chance, honestly, I'm not going to be able to actually record these videos on Wednesday nights. Those are very important words to have forgotten, Nathan. My roommate will be a Trekkie, thumbs up, a Trekkie who is watching through Deep Space, through Star Trek, actually on the order I suggested, not because I suggested it, just they happen to do it the right way. But we'll see what happens. Thankfully, Thursdays, the days after these episodes go out, I don't have classes. Partially, I planned it that way. Partially, that's also just the day the department takes off classes. That's their extra weekend day. And I assume my roommate does not, but honestly, I imagine I'm going to be learning about it just as much as you do. So they might get a bit sporadic after this point. Twitter, I've said before, follow me on Twitter, link in the description if you really want updates on delays and expected release dates. But I still hope to do every episode reviewed, hopefully the day after, but at the very least, probably that Friday, maybe the weekend at worst. But Prodigy reviews were pretty quick, so I'm hopeful. That's it for today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.